Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. This is the first video I will be making on this series, where I will be reading stories of different genres to fall asleep to. Enjoy. I was 18 years old, female, when this happened. At the time, I was living at home with my parents, who had recently moved far out into the countryside. Their farm was part of a tiny rural cluster, about 7 farms on one road. That night I was home alone with our dog, a large Labrador I was looking after until my parents came back the next day. It was around 11 p.m. I was lying on the upstairs couch with a movie playing quietly on the TV, half asleep and relaxed in the stillness of the house. Then 3 loud knocks shattered the silence. They came from the front door downstairs, the door directly at the bottom of the staircase leading up to where I was. The sound was sharp and deliberate, not hesitant, not accidental. My dog sprang out of his bed beside me and started barking immediately. I tried to calm him, but he was beyond listening. He bolted down the stairs and positioned himself in front of the door, barking and growling into the darkness. Outside, the courtyard was completely black. I stood halfway down the staircase, my pulse hammering in my ears, and called out, "Hello?" No reply, just silence. I called again, louder this time, still nothing. The quiet that followed felt wrong, thick and watchful. After a moment that felt much longer than it was, I forced myself to move. I stepped down the rest of the stairs, my dog still tense at the door. Carefully, I opened it just enough to lean my head outside. There was nothing there. No lights, no movement, no footsteps fading away. Only the dark courtyard and the cold night air. It felt like whoever, or whatever, had knocked, had simply vanished. I shut the door quickly and locked every entrance in the house. My hands were shaking as I called my parents. They immediately contacted our neighbours, a couple who lived nearby. Within minutes, they arrived. I explained what had happened, still trying to steady my voice. They decided to walk around the barns and check the property. Those 10 minutes felt endless. When they returned, they said they hadn't found anything. Still, they strongly suggested I come sleep in their guest room for the night. I told them it was probably just me overreacting if nothing had been found, but they kept insisting, more seriously than I expected, that it would be safer to come with them. I refused. I couldn't leave my dog alone. Before leaving, they told me to call immediately if anything else happened, no matter how small. When my parents returned the next day, they installed surveillance cameras outside the front door. They said it was to make me feel safer, especially since I was often home alone with the dog. A few months later, my parents were celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. During the evening, I found myself talking with my female neighbour, and thanked her again for coming over that night. Her expression shifted. She went quiet for a moment, like she was weighing whether to say what was on her mind. Then she told me she had to be honest with me. That night, shortly before my parents called her, she had been outside saying goodnight to her horses. The yard was completely still. No wind, no distant cars, nothing. That's when she heard it. Footsteps. Clear, deliberate footsteps crunching through the gravel in our courtyard. Not random, not hurried, slow, controlled, like someone walking with purpose in the dark. She said the sound carried unnaturally well in the silence. Then the footsteps stopped, right there in the yard. She waited to hear them continue, to hear someone speak, a door, anything. But there was only a heavy, suffocating silence, and just moments later my parents called her about the knocking. She told me she never heard those footsteps leave. I worked for a improvement retail store when I was a teenager. I started my shift after my college classes, but it was just part-time, so usually I worked 4 to 8 p.m. Sometimes, though, hours would shift a little, and I'd have to work until close, that is, 10 p.m. Anyway, on one of those late evenings there was this redhead who worked the registers. Sometimes the cashiers would need to carry all the crap people changed their minds about buying and put them back on the shelves late into the night. By this point the store tended to be nearly deserted. She came to my department, which was located near the back of the store, and asked me straight up if I could escort her around the store while she finished restocking the merch. So, idiot white knight that I am, I did. I asked her why she needed me to come with her. She said this much older guy, late 40s-ish, had been following her around the store and flirting with her since she'd started her shift in the morning. That's 6 or 7 times the same guy came to hit on her in a 9 to 10 hour shift. We did have security in the building and she did report the guy, but our 2 guards were the most useless sacks of dough ever and couldn't even find him despite the guy returning to harass her numerous times. So anyway, I follow her around while she puts her merch back, and as I'm making small talk I can see this guy half hidden, between an end cap and the lumber storage. He was older like she'd said, but jacked in gills and taller than me by a few inches. I'm 5'11". We made eye contact and he, looking at me like I was having an affair with his wife or something, trembling and crazy-eyed just like in the movies. So, yeah, this dude would have absolutely destroyed me. And the store was near closing with only a skeleton crew scattered throughout this massive store. Somehow I gathered up the courage to ask, "Can I help you, sir? We're just about closing here." In the most assertive way my 18-year-old brain could muster, which was enough for him to scurry off. The girl just kind of smiled nervously at me like, that was him, wasn't it? By the time my shift ended and I went to my car, there were only a single-digit amount of vehicles left, and all of them were parked in employee stalls save one, which was parked all the way on the other end. I couldn't see if there was anybody inside, but there shouldn't have been any customers at that point. The next day the redhead told me the guy had tried to follow her home, but she avoided him by turning into a side road at the last possible second. She quit shortly after that. Couldn't blame her with the incompetent security, and I never saw either her or that dude again. I wish I could at least remember her name, but it's been a long fucking time. We lived in a small enough city that this kind of thing was fairly rare, so the guy must have been from out of town. So this started when I was really little, maybe around 8 years old. My dad worked late and came home around 2 a.m. every day, so at night he would watch TV in the living room. One night, he saw me peeking through the pillars we have in the hallway. He called my name but didn't see me anymore. He went to my room and saw me asleep. Then, when I was 18, I went to see the Barbie movie and curled my hair that day. I came home and went to my room. My dad was smoking a cigarette while watching TV. He cracks the back door open and smokes outside while still watching TV. While standing at the back door, he saw me in the hallway looking at him. He felt something was off, so he yelled, "Hey!" and whatever looked like me ran out of sight toward my room. A few weeks later, my grandpa said he saw me go into my closet when I was actually in the bathroom showering. The next time someone different saw me, it was my best friend. When I was 19, I moved in with her and her family. She works nights with her mom. They were coming home around 5 a.m, and while sitting in my car, she saw me staring into nothingness. Just a blank face. She went into our room and saw me sleeping. Now it doesn't stop there. I've about 4 more people who have seen me, and this is at work. At times I take a day off. I've had 2 people come up to me. 2 people who have never talked to each other and that I rarely talk to. And months apart they both said the same thing. "Hey, were you here yesterday? I saw you." I told them, "No, I didn't come into work." Each of them swore they saw me. I never connected the dots until the next incidents. I have a best friend at work. She's 48 and I'm 20. We talk every day. She knows everything. Every time people come up to me at work and say they saw me when I wasn't there, she's usually next to me. We both would just say, "That's weird," and move on, until one day. I didn't go to work for 2 days because the area I work in was closed, and we had to work overtime to make up for it. The next week, once we were back to a regular schedule, my best friend and I went to the restroom together like we always do. She was in the stall, and I was by the sink waiting for her. A girl I always see came up to me and said, "Hey, I barely saw you last week." I told her, "Yeah, we couldn't come in because our area was closed." She looked confused and said, "Wait, but I saw you." At first she thought she might be thinking of a different day, but then she said, "No, I swear I saw you. I saw you both days with your work equipment and everything." She was freaking out, and I told her, "You're not the first person to tell me they've seen me when I wasn't there." My best friend came out of the stall and said, "Yeah, the amount of times people come up to us and say that is really common." That freaked the girl out even more, and since then we've actually become friends. That situation bonded us. Then the next week, my 48-year-old best friend and I were coming back from break and separated into 2 different parts of the building where we couldn't see each other. I was training a lady that day. About 40 minutes later, I went into my friend's part of the building, then went to the restroom. My friend was there and said, "I'm glad you're here. I have to tell you something. Were you here in my area after break?" I said, "What do you mean?" "Of course not. We separated." She said that right after break, when she got to her area to start working, she saw me coming out of an aisle. She got excited to see me and waved, but I just stared at her. No smile, no wave, and then walked back into the aisle and disappeared. She said I was gone. I would never do that. It would be so rude, and she's like a mother to me. I would never ignore her like that, so now I'm just left confused. Too many people have experienced this for it to be a coincidence. No one at work looks like me. Not even a little bit. Why have so many people experienced this? Does anyone have similar stories? I need answers. I want to know what this means. About 10 years ago, I lived with my then boyfriend in a house his family owned. From the start, the place had a heavy, weird atmosphere I couldn't explain. His grandfather had collected various tribal artifacts, so the house was filled with masks and carved figures. One wooden doll always bothered me more than anything, though. A dark figure with a glass cavity in its stomach containing what looked like hair and nail clippings. Just looking at it made me uneasy. I'd already been hearing strange noises around the house, footsteps on the stairs, random stuff, so I avoided being alone there. But one night, things escalated. I woke up because I thought I heard my boyfriend gaming in the living room. Clicking, movement, the usual sounds. The hallway light was on, so I called out to him to keep it down. The noises stopped instantly. When I turned back, my boyfriend was sound asleep beside me. I stared at him, confused, then looked toward the open door. That's when a tall, dark figure walked across the hallway. I hid under the covers and held on to my boyfriend. He checked the house, but no one was there. A couple of weeks later, we moved the creepy doll into the garage because it had started to freak us both out. Our new bedroom was unfortunately right beside that garage. One night, while we were lying in bed watching a show, something grabbed my foot and tugged. I screamed. My boyfriend thought I was messing with him, until something touched his foot too. The look on his face said everything. We didn't stay much longer after that, and honestly, I believe something dark was in that house. I still get goosebumps and a little nauseous when I think about it. I 21F, was about 11 years old when I went through this. When I was in, I believe, the 4th grade, I think I may have had a spirit attached to me. This was around the time of the Charlie Charlie Challenge amongst many other paranormal trends. Although I didn't participate in them, I did find them really interesting. I was never scared of these types of things. But to get to the point, I started to see a little girl in the corner of my eye a lot. She started off far away and I tried to ignore it. Sometimes when I would turn to look, I could see her for a split second. She never moved, was always still. She would either look at me or look straight depending on how she was sitting. She was pale, dark hair, and looked soulless. Over time I started to fear her as I kept seeing her, and she would get closer as months went on. It got to a point where one morning I was getting ready for school, and when I closed the closet door she was standing behind it, and me and her were face to face. I remember freezing in fear, and then I looked away, and when I opened my eyes she was gone, and my mum walked into the room. The stress from it eventually got so bad I told my grandma and she told me to tell the spirit to leave, and I started doing that. She eventually started to move further away from me until the last time I saw her. The last time I saw her, I was downstairs in the dark going to get a bottle of water, and as I was going up the stairs I saw her and it seemed like she was trying to run at me, and I yelled to leave me alone. And that was the last time I saw her. It was also the only time I saw her physically move. After that experience, I remember feeling relieved, and it just stopped. I've never had anything even remotely like that happen to me again. Can anyone tell me what I may have experienced, or if anyone else has experienced anything similar? I would like to add I never had any kind of imaginary friends growing up, and I was always content playing by myself. I never experimented with any rituals, I just watched a lot of paranormal stuff, but was never scared of it. I was an RTTO, registered tow truck operator, for about 2 years. It was a great job, pay was good, lots of overtime and on-call shifts. I got into the career because of shows I watched as a kid like Highway Through Hell. So when I got the chance to go into the field, I jumped on it. The first month was good. I learned a lot of experience and new skills. Part of our job as RTTO was emergency calls with police and fire for crash scenes and impounds. So we saw a lot of tragic stuff, DUI fatality, hit and runs, non-DUI fatalities, e.g. The job can be very emotionally and mentally draining, and can mess you up if you're not careful. However, there's another kind of aspect to the job not a lot of drivers talk about. The paranormal, odd stuff, or calls that unsettles you. Almost every tow truck driver has experienced it. It was a snowy, cold November night. In 2023, we didn't get a lot of calls that day, so I was just chilling at the shop for my on-call shift. The night was going very slowly, we hadn't gotten any calls for hours. So I lay down for a bit, not expecting to get any call for night. Then all of a sudden I get a call for a broken down WSP, Washington State Patrol, car off this dirt road. I didn't think much of it at the time, it wasn't too wired for me since I've gotten a few calls like it before, so I hop in my flatbed and drive up to the call's location. The directions took me a good 30-ish minutes outside of the city to the mountains on a 90. By the time I get off the freeway, it was super foggy and very hard to see, so I took it slow and easy to be safe. I keep driving up the now dirt mountain road, and then I start thinking to myself that this is a really odd road for WSP to be on since they usually stay on the interstates and state highways. I didn't think much of it when I first got the call because staters and sheriffs do occasionally go out on the more remote roads. But the road I was going on was an unpaved dirt logging road. There was nothing out here, just an old logging road and trees. I tried to rationalise it to myself that maybe the cop was just out here for an abandoned car, which would explain why he has all their way out here, since cars do get left and abandoned out here often. So I just shrug it off and continue my way up the road. I finally get to the location and stop the truck dead in its tracks and just sit there for a minute. What the hell, I think to myself. The WSP car was parked out on this mountain road with all its doors open and no lights on with no officers in sight. It was so foggy I really could only see the car, but it was clear to me that no one was in sight. I very heavily contemplated just turning around and going back. But I eventually decide to hop out and inspect the car and look for the officer, since he could have been injured after all. So I hopped out of the truck and grabbed my AR with my sidearm holstered. Since I had no idea what I was about to walk into, I walked up to the car very cautiously. Just because I had my guns on did not make the situation feel any better nor safer. I first check out the driver's seat, then the passenger seat. Odd, I think to myself, nothing is missing. It was like everything was frozen in time. At this point, I'm starting to get a strange feeling like something is off that when I look into the trunk of the car and notice the AR is missing, I immediately freeze up and look around. As I'm looking around, that's when I noticed that the forest was dead, quite. No wind, no nothing. I have seen a lot of messes up, stuffed dead bodies, entire families killed in one accident ECT, but I was completely unnerved. Something inside me was telling me to get the hell out of there. I managed to gather the composure to do a walk around one more time, just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Then I called my dispatcher just to make sure I had the right location and information, and sure enough, everything was correct. At that point, I was ready as hell to get out as fast as possible. Right before I turned the truck around, I yelled out just to see if I'd get a response, but nothing but dead since came back. Something is deeply wrong, and with this, I said to myself and booked it out of there. The whole drive back, I had this sick feeling like I stumbled across something I was absolutely not supposed to see, or if I was even supposed to be there. I keep thinking why the cop was all the way out there, why he left the car, or why all the doors were wide open, or if it was even a cop in the first place. More or less, why only the AR was missing when thousands of dollars worth of equipment was in that car. Once I got back to the shop, I called the police dispatcher that gave us the call. Since I knew her, I was hoping she could give some answers, but no, she said the exact same thing that was said to me, that a WSP car was broken down and just needed a tow. I never told my supervisor or anyone else out of fear that they wouldn't believe me. All right, that's where tonight's stories end. If you're still here, take a second and look around you. Listen closely. The quiet always feels a little different after a story like that, doesn't it? If you enjoyed tonight's collection of chilling tales, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. There are plenty more stories out there, stranger, darker, and far more unsettling. Got a story of your own? Leave it in the comments. The scariest ones are often the ones that really happened. Until next time, lock your doors, turn off the lights, and whatever you do, don't look behind you. Sleep well.